Hello, my beautiful friends, my fellow space blobs, earth blobs, sparkly blobs, or whatever form you need to take at this time or you love to express yourself with at this time. I am here for it. I know as I'm sitting down here today, preparing for one of my favorite seasons, one of my favorite archetypes, one of my favorite energies, I am also continuing to struggle through this winter. It has been a very powerful one where I've had a lot of self-realization, and there's been a lot of tears and a lot of processing and a lot of just feeling really big, heavy emotions, and also moving at tortoise's speed. And I've just really had to accept myself in this moment. And I think it's really important to acknowledge wherever I am when I come to sit down here, because I'm only doing this work if it feels authentic. I'm only doing this work if it feels like I am bringing my actual self to the table. So I always like to kind of set up where I'm at this time. I live in Sweden, and January in Sweden is not particularly known for being the easiest time of year for anyone, even people who have been living here for years and decades. It's just a time when all of us have to kind of move in a different way. So I'm coming in from that space as we prepare for Aquarius season, but I'm also really looking forward to our chat today because we're going to walk through Aquarius. This is one of my favorite archetypes and energetics. I look up to Aquarius in so many ways. They are my idols and my creative beacons in so many ways, and I've learned so much from Aquarius. And I think it's so beautiful to take this moment before each season, feel through the energies, get ourselves set up, get ourselves comfortable and cozy, and feel like this Aquarius season is going to be a warm embrace. I know so often we think about Aquarius as the detached, eagle-eye view of our lives, and that can be really useful and even exciting and very expansive and fun. But I think Aquarius is also about joy. It's also about connecting to ourselves. It's also about connecting to our truest versions of ourselves. It's also about belonging. It's also about a playfulness that comes when we feel like we don't have to put on a show. And that warmth and that love and that care is so powerful and has the power to help each and every one of us to feel more like we belong here in the life that we are living. So let's get into today's chat. We're going to talk about Aquarius 101, get ourselves familiar with this archetype. I'm going to share some of the ways that I love this archetype, and then I'm going to talk about some of the themes for this Aquarius season. I will go through a few of the transits I think that are really interesting, and we'll end with a little intuitive reading to give us that warm, loving place. So stick around if you want to just have a lovely moment with your tea while you're walking, while you're resting, while you're doing some art. I love the idea of chatting about these ideas while people are working on their own creative projects and whatever they're doing. This is going to be the space for you. I can't wait to get into it. Let's do it. The fixed air sign of Aquarius is just so beautiful. It challenges all of the dichotomies I think we're taught to hold in our mind, in our culture. It challenges culture. It challenges the performances we feel like we need to put up. It does all of these beautiful things. I think just even that idea of the fixed air sign is fascinating because it's a dichotomy in and of itself, and it challenges it by breaking it down. As a fixed sign, this is all about the commitment to the process, what happens over time when we develop a skill, when we show up to a creative process, when we move through a season of life, when we move through a developmental stage, the time it takes, the commitment it takes to do that. Fixed signs are all about that juicy middle section of a process that's messy and has a lot of subtlety to it, but we stick through it until we transition into the next thing. But then again, we have that air element here, which means it's all about the change process. It's all about the breeze that's always blowing through, the movability, the changeability of the whole process. And that's that only constant is change theme that I think Aquarius always brings with it. But even the planets that rule Aquarius are quite interesting. Originally, Aquarius was ruled by Saturn, and then when Uranus was brought into the mix, that became the new ruling planet of Aquarius. And both of these planets are so different. Saturn, we often think of as this idea of restriction, right? But I think when Saturn's connected to Aquarius, we're really thinking about the responsibility of becoming ourselves. For me, it's the stewardship of being invested in how we change and evolve that Saturn really brings when it's connected with Aquarius. But there is this kind of deep reverence for that process, for the sacredness of it, for the importance of it, that it's not always just about expanding and floating away, but that showing up to our becoming and becoming ourselves is one of the most sacred acts of this lifetime. And I think Saturn and Aquarius shows that and represents that really beautifully. And then we have Uranus, the planet of change, evolution, technology, shaking things up, turning things on their side, turning things on their head, doing things all outside of the box. And I think that's much more what we consider Aquarian energy, right? Kind of unique, unconventional, free-spirited. But for me, Aquarius embodies both of those things: unconventional, free-spirited, joyful, unique, original, the creative joy of just doing things your way, but also the sacred stewardship of becoming yourself and the seriousness of that, actually, and the power and the profundity of that. And I think that is really the core of Aquarian energy, and where those dichotomies start to break down. We can hold both. Aquarius is represented also by, I think, figures that are holding two cups. We have the water bearer. We also have the image of the eagle, and often that eagle will also be holding two cups. The star card in tarot also shows that water bearer image of this celestial being holding these beautiful cups. And I think that's really interesting because those cups are these beautiful ingredients that we are pouring into our lives, the beautiful spiritual selves that are also invested in this physical world. And I've always loved the star card and that image of the water bearer. There's a sacred duty here to become ourselves in life. And there's also a sacred courage that it takes to do just that. As the 11th sign, this is also connected, Aquarius is connected with ideas of the collective, being a part of the collective, of belonging, of connecting, of the connectivity of the universe, not just feeling like we're an isolated individual, but that as we become ourselves, we are more connected to the whole. It's also the 11th sign, and the 11th house is connected to larger vision, technology, innovation, creativity, and thinking outside of the box. So what is not to love about this archetype? I don't even know how it's not like people's number one expression. Honestly, I just love it so much. It brings such a smile to my face. But I have a lot of favorites, so that's not to say that I don't also love so many other archetypes, all of them really in their own ways. But some of the stereotypes that I think are really interesting that come out of Aquarius, and I think are really fun to just point out and maybe even poke a few holes in, are things like being people who have a lot of Aquarian energy being unfeeling, calculated, detached, have a hard time committing to things, stubborn is a good one, unconventional. These are all those kind of stereotypes that we'll often see in social media and pop astrology, which it's always fun. It's always fun to have a good joke. But I think it's really interesting how uncomfortable our culture is with people who are themselves and express themselves and evolve into themselves and kind of just do things their own way. I think in general, most of us were taught to not do that, right? Whatever our culture was, most of us were taught to kind of fit in and not stick out too much and not make a point of expressing ourselves and being free to do so without feeling like we have to get pulled back in or sucked back in. And I think a lot of those stereotypes reflect that cultural discomfort with becoming ourselves. And I've always been fascinated by that. But at the heart of it, for me, Aquarius is that sacred process of becoming ourselves. It's not just about the performance of becoming ourselves, right? I think a lot of times we'll think about Aquarius energy as the fun part of putting on the wild clothes and just expressing in such a unique way. And that's all really fun. And I'm definitely for self-expression in those ways and letting everybody express in their own beautiful, unique way out in the world. But it's even more than that, right? It's also the internal process of releasing ourselves from the roles, from the poses, from the masks, from the performances that we feel we need to perform in order to survive this life. It asks us to do a lot of exploration and excavation of where we feel we have to keep up the performance. And it's also a very encouraging energy and archetype and season for figuring out ways to bring more of our true self into our lives, to figure out how to do that self-expression. I think this takes a lifetime to do. The work of Aquarian energy is a lifetime's work of becoming ourselves. It will change so many times. It will change dozens and dozens of times throughout our lives. And each of those layers that shifts and moves reveals a different level to it. But in general, the Leo and Aquarius axis is all about becoming ourselves and figuring out how to express that in the world and bring that artistry and that joy and that love. And I think that's another thing. Aquarian energy is joyful. While a lot of times it does get described as detached, that eagle's eye view, which is also really fun to be able to see the bigger picture. I've always been a big fan of that. I think for me, Aquarius in some ways is the deepest love we can have in our lives, because it's about letting ourselves be ourselves. And like, what's more beautiful than that, you know? And challenging the cultural pain that we as humans have been living with for hundreds and thousands of years through time in different guises and formats. So it gets me emotional when I think about it. I just really appreciate Aquarians and Aquarius energy. It's just been a really important part of my life. I told you, I'm feeling some feelings this winter and moving through some really deep feelings at the moment. But let's talk about some of the themes for this particular Aquarius season, some things I'm really looking forward to as we move through this time. Number one, unique self-expression, like I just mentioned, but this is really a season, I think, for a lot of us to explore ways to find courage to self-express and become ourselves in the world. And that doesn't mean we have to do all of that during Aquarius season, but I think a lot of us are going to be getting sparks of insight about that process and what that feels like for us. And I think that's going to be really inspiring and hopeful and healing, because as each of us learns to express and become ourselves, we liberate those around us, and we also find more belonging in the world. And I think there's no more important work at this moment than that. There's also going to be a lot of new sight and visions, I think, coming in during this Aquarius season, and just landing and percolating and finding their way into our field of vision. And so I just want to say, take your time with this one. As new visions and new ideas and new understanding comes in, it takes time to incorporate. It takes time to understand. It takes time to know how to act on them. So just remember that you may be getting new visions and ideas, and you may not know exactly how to translate them quite yet. However, they are coming in. Reconnecting with our truest selves, reconnecting with our joyful childlike play, the things that we've always loved to do, maybe since we were very young, allowing those to come through again, maybe playing a little bit with releasing some of the performances that we have, reevaluation of what brings us joy. Maybe we've been trying to push ourselves into the same routine. And I think Aquarius, because it's got that fixed sign energy, challenges us to think about what we're sustaining and what feels really true and good. And finally, creative breakthroughs and the courage to make changes. I think that this Aquarius season is going to bring a lot of clarity and a lot of inspiration on how we want to move forward and what we want life to look like in the coming months and years. So I'm really curious and excited about some of those energies moving through during this Aquarius season and seeing how each of us feels by the time we reach Pisces season. And there was just a couple of transits that I think are really interesting for this Aquarius season that I just wanted to throw into this conversation. There's a lot to work through here, so I'm just going to keep it simple. The big moment of this Aquarius season is going to be at the very beginning, when the Sun and Pluto are conjunct and move into Aquarius together around the 20th, the 21st of January. I love that symbolic movement together of Sun and Pluto. This entrance into Aquarius is really kind of this like symbolic sunrise to me of a new energetic cycle. Pluto is going to have one final visitation to Capricorn in September, October, November of this year. But after that, we are working exclusively with Pluto and Aquarius for the next 20 years. And this is such an honest, beautiful, expressive transit. And, I don't know exactly what this is going to look like. I'm not going to sit here and say that I know what the next 20 years are going to look like because Pluto is in Aquarius. But symbolically, what I will say is that this is just a time of deep honesty and freedom and liberation from cycles of heaviness that have to do with upholding systems that just don't work anymore, both internally and in the collective. And a lot of us are going to be thinking about ways to live a life that feels truer and deeper. It's a very powerful moment. I think it's important to remember with a big, long outer planet transit like Pluto moving into Aquarius that this is 20 years. So this Aquarius season is just kind of maybe about getting ourselves a little bit oriented, feeling through, seeing what's coming through, and noticing some of the themes that are starting to show up for each of us. We have the full moon in Leo on January 25th, and that's going to be all about embracing the unconventional and opening ourselves up for how we want to express ourselves in the coming months. And that's kind of our full moon before the Lunar New Year, which will happen on February 9th into the 10th with that new moon in Aquarius, beginning the year of the wood dragon. I'm not an expert on the Chinese archetypes. I have to be honest. I love exploring them, but I definitely don't have the depth of knowledge that I might have in this area over here. But I'm very excited about that idea of the wood dragon. It seems like a really, really beautiful combo. So that Lunar New Year energetic is really strong here. And I think for a lot of us, we will be feeling kind of that surge of new energy coming in and opening us up. And there's one final little transit that I think is nice to check in on here. And that happens before Lunar New Year, but on January 26th, Uranus is going direct in Taurus after about a 5-month retrograde. And some of the questions that I think are fun to ask when there's like an outer planet like this stationing is, how have your dreams and visions undergone a shift? And I've been kind of thinking about this since 2018, which was when we first had some of that Uranus energy in Taurus. So just thinking over the last 5 or 6 years about what that journey has been like for you with Uranus and Taurus, it's a really nice moment to do that. And what can you learn and what wisdom can you take away from these last 5 or 6 years, and how has that served you and helped you? By the time we get through that Lunar New Year and we're in the new year of the lunar cycle, we're going to have so much energy in Aquarius, like that last week of Aquarius. Mars, Venus, Pluto, and the Sun and Mercury are all going to be in Aquarius for that last week of Aquarius. So it's going to be a very Aquarian moment we're going to be having right before Pisces season, where a lot of us are probably going to be having a lot of clarity and insights, because air signs help us see and understand at a pretty profound level. And that is going to be really interesting to see how we all move through that. Let's close out this time together as we've been exploring this Aquarius energy by pulling a single card. Often I will do 4 cards, one for kind of each week of Aquarius season, but I think this time I just want to keep it really, really simple and soft and gentle and very open. I think it's so important right now, actually, that each of us is kind of feeling that openness, and I know many of you have been with me on this journey in recent months and know that I don't like to be predictive. I think it's so important to set each of us up to feel very safe to trust ourselves and to trust our own processes. And the more that we can have light, gentle, open, magical practices that allow for that openness and that lightness, the better. And that is what I am here to do, is to create those honest, soft spaces. And that's why. And it's the 3 of Swords, which is really powerful. This is one of the most important cards, and one that I think culturally a lot of us resist, and are told to fear, which is really unfortunate, because this is like where the beauty happens in life. This is where the important understandings come in. I know we see the 3 of Swords and we see this heartache and we see the pain, and there's, in this card, there's this big storm of rain pouring down behind the heart with the 3 swords. But for me, this is like the awareness of something that has been sitting with us, that we may have been carrying, that we may have been feeling for a long time, and that clarity of sight giving us freedom. the heart is the vessel through which we see the most clearly often, and where so much of our guidance and that pulling forward into the next things in life and to moving through life comes from. And I think this for me is like when you have a sword that's been sitting in that space in your body, in your heart, in your field of vision, and you're finally able to see it and you can remove it, there's so much freedom in that. And I think it's not just about going through our this Aquarius season being about sitting down and going through our lives and picking out all the things that have been going wrong, or all the things we've been doing wrong, and all the heartaches and all the things we just have to address right now. I think it doesn't just have to be about like horrible pain or, living through old memories in the mind and in the body that are stored there. Like that could be one way that shows up, but I think that's just one way. I think it can also be the realization that we've maybe been holding ourselves back from trying something that we really wanted to try, and that pain's been on our heart. It could also be realizing that we've been talking to ourselves a certain way and that we're ready to start having a different conversation. It might be that we realize that we are holding a lot in our bodies and that we want some help, and we want to find somebody who can work with us that helps us do that. It might be that we have a sudden realization about what we really want to do in life. Like it's not just about being able to perceive the negative and fix it. It's also about perceiving the longing, perceiving the realization of something very important to us. And I think our culture says, oh, it's fine, you just numb it out. Ignore that longing, ignore that desire, ignore that knowing. But really what Three of Swords is that as soon as you allow yourself to know the knowing, there's relief and there's joy and there's meaning in life again, and there's an ability to feel all of the emotions again. And I think that's what's so important about this card, and something that's been really underplayed in all these years with tarot on the internet. Three of Swords magic often gets downplayed or used in a way that I think doesn't really help us feel safe and loved. And I think in the heart of it, this tracks so well with what I've learned about Aquarian energy, which is that it really is the courage to create and play and be yourself in life that requires seeing yourself clearly and allowing yourself to change in ways that maybe don't fit the mold, maybe don't fit the script for what you felt you needed to do. And whether that was a script that came from outside of yourself or from something that you developed in order to survive, or just from a past season of your life when it made sense, it doesn't matter, right? Sometimes it's time to change the script. Sometimes it's time to let go of the script entirely and improv our way through it. And I think that's really what Aquarius season is about. I am going to be offering up a lot of extra support during this Aquarius season over on my Patreon and into the spring as well. I am really looking forward to teaching tarot. This year, I'm going to be offering that up on my Patreon, but I think I'm also going to make it available if you just want to purchase the teachings on their own. That will also be available. That's still in the works, but I'm really looking forward to that. And I would highly recommend joining my Patreon if you want to know more about that. Or if you're looking for those soft places where you feel like you are set up for the magic of your own life. That's what I do. And that's the space that I create. And I am doing that journey along with all of you, becoming myself. And I think that getting to share that journey with my patrons and having our community together has been one of the things that's given me the courage to keep going. So I'd really love to see you there. I love it when you're here. That's so meaningful. This space has continued to change as I've continued to change, but the people who are here sitting with me right now, you're everything. So let me know how you're doing. Leave a message, send me a like, or subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet. All of those things are really, really helpful. I will be back very soon for our Leo full moon happening this Aquarius season. As a Leo, that's a very exciting full moon for me every year, so I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to seeing you all back here very soon for more magic, more ritual, more softness, more openness, and I hope you have a beautiful Aquarius season.